The call came at 2:30 in the afternoon. Just as I was stepping out of a suffocating budget meeting, it was Marco from the lawn service, his voice dropping to a whisper that instantly made the hair on my arms stand up. He told me he was trimming near the window well and heard crying coming from my basement. My stomach bottomed out because my daughter is 300 miles away, and I have not opened that basement door in 4 days. The silence in the house was not peaceful. It was heavy. It felt like a physical weight that settled on the furniture and the floorboards the moment the door clicked shut behind my daughter. Lila is 12 years old, and for the last 7 years, she has been the noise and the motion that made this oversized colonial in Briar Glen feel like a home rather than a storage unit for memories I was trying to curate. She was gone for the week. It was a leadership trip to Adirondack Ridge Camp, a supervised excursion that required 3 distinct permission slips and a check that made my bank account wince. I had spent the last month telling myself that I would enjoy this. I had told my colleagues at the firm that I was looking forward to the downtime. I had planned to drink expensive red wine, watch documentaries that did not involve animated princesses or teenage melodrama, and sleep diagonally on the bed. But standing in the hallway, staring at her sneakers kicked haphazardly near the mudroom bench, I did not feel relieved. I felt unmoored. The house groaned in the wind, the timbers settling with the change in temperature, and without the television blaring or the sound of Lila practicing her flute, the place felt vast and hollow. I am 33 years old, a project manager who manages multi-million-dollar timelines for commercial construction. Yet the silence of my own suburban foyer made me want to check the locks twice. I shook it off. I had a schedule to keep. The first item on the list was the lawn. Usually, the neighbor's kid, a lanky teenager named Toby, handled the mowing for $20 and a glass of lemonade. But Toby had bailed on me via text message at 6 in the morning. Citing a sudden conflict with lacrosse practice, the grass was getting long, shaggy around the ankles of the oak trees in the front yard. In Briar Glen, an unkempt lawn was practically a violation of the unspoken social contract. I had called Everbright Yard and Home on a whim. Their flyer had been stuck in my mailbox a week ago, promising competitive rates and same-day service. They arrived at 10 in the morning. I watched from the kitchen window as the truck pulled up. It was a clean white pickup, the logo painted in cheerful green script on the side. The crew lead was a man who looked to be in his 40s, with skin tanned to the color of old leather and a thick, neat mustache. He introduced himself as Marco Daines. Marco was professional, perhaps overly so. He walked the property with me, a clipboard in hand, noting the gradient of the slope and the positioning of the hydrangeas. He was chatty in a way that felt practiced, asking how long I had lived here and commenting on the architecture. "You have a beautiful property, Ms. Stewart," he said, tapping his pen against the clipboard. "Good drainage, solid foundation. We do not see these older builds held up so well usually." "Thank you," I said. "I try to keep up with it." He paused near the side of the house, squinting at the dining room window. "I noticed you upgraded your security recently. Smart move. A lot of folks in the neighborhood are doing that." I frowned, looking at where he was pointing. There was a small, reflective sticker in the bottom corner of the glass. It was shaped like a shield, silver and blue. I blinked. "I have not upgraded anything. I think that is just from the previous owner." Marco tilted his head. "It looks brand new." "Ma'am, no peeling, no sun fade. Usually those things crack after a summer or two." He was right. The sticker looked pristine. I stepped closer, peering at it. It was not the brand of the alarm system I had installed 3 years ago. It was a generic shield with the words, "Protected by Sentinel," printed in block letters. "That is odd," I said. "I do not remember seeing that there last week. Maybe a solicitor slapped it on?" Marco suggested with a shrug. "Sometimes they do that to mark houses they have visited. Or maybe you just never noticed it. Brain plays tricks on us, right?" I nodded, eager to dismiss the unease pricking at the back of my neck. "Right, just never noticed it." I left Marco and his crew to their work and drove to the office. The incident with the sticker faded as the demands of the day took over. I I had 3 client calls, a budget reconciliation that was off by 4%, and a vendor dispute regarding the quality of drywall for a site in Boston. By the time 2 o'clock rolled around, my brain was a static fuzz of spreadsheets and email notifications. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting, listening to a junior associate explain why we were behind schedule on the Riverside project. When my phone vibrated against the mahogany table, I glanced down. Unknown number. I sent it to voicemail. It vibrated again immediately. Same number. I apologized to the room, excusing myself, and stepped out into the corridor. The office was cool and sterile, a sharp contrast to the humid warmth of the day outside. "This is Ariana," I answered, my voice brisk. "Ms. Stewart? It is Marco. From Everbright." The tone of his voice stopped me. The professional, chatty lilt was gone. He sounded low, tight. "Is everything okay? Marco? Did something happen to the equipment?" "No. Ma'am, look, I do not want to alarm you. I am trimming the hedges on the east side of the house, near the window wells." My grip on the phone tightened. The east side. That was where the basement windows looked out at ground level, hidden behind the boxwoods. "What is it?" I asked. "I hear something." He said. He paused, and I could hear the wind blowing into his microphone. "I hear crying. Ms. Stewart, from the basement area." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What? It sounds like a kid." "Ma'am, or maybe a woman. It is faint." I turned off the trimmers to make sure. "I thought maybe you had left a TV on, but the window is cracked open just a hair. And it is coming from inside. It sounds like someone is hurt." My stomach dropped so fast I felt nauseous. Lila was 300 miles away. I was standing in an office building 20 minutes from home. I had not been in the basement since Sunday, 4 days ago, when I went down to switch the laundry. "Marco," I said, my voice shaking despite my best effort to clamp it down. "There is no one in my house. My daughter is away. I am at work." There was a silence on the line. "Are you sure, ma'am? Because I am standing right here, and I hear it. I am coming home." I said, "Do not go inside. Just wait for me." I hung up and ran. I did not explain myself to the associate or my boss. I grabbed my purse and sprinted to the parking garage, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The drive was a blur of red lights and aggressive lane changes. My mind was racing through scenarios, each worse than the last. Had Lila come home early? Had she run away from the camp and somehow made it back without calling me? No, the camp would have called. Had someone broken in? A squatter? A neighbor's child who had fallen through the window well? I pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later, tires screeching slightly on the asphalt. The Everbright truck was still there. Marco was standing by the front porch, looking uncomfortable. He was holding his cap in his hands. I got out of the car, leaving the door open. "Where?" I demanded. "Around the side," he said, pointing. I marched past him, my heels sinking into the soft turf. I rounded the corner of the house, pushing through the boxwoods that lined the foundation. The window well was a semicircular cutout in the earth, covered by a plastic grate. The window itself was small, a narrow rectangle of glass obscured by grime and cobwebs. I knelt in the mulch, straining my ears. At first, there was only the sound of the wind in the trees and the distant hum of traffic on the turnpike. Then, I heard it. It was soft, low, a whimper. "Please." It was barely a whisper. "Please help." It sounded like a child. I scrambled back, gasping. It was real. Marco was standing behind me, his face pale. "You hear it?" I nodded, unable to speak. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them once before jamming the brass key into the front door lock. I threw the door open and shouted into the foyer. "Hello? Who is there?" Silence answered me. I ran to the kitchen, grabbing a heavy flashlight from the utility drawer. I did not own a gun. I did not own a bat. The flashlight was the heaviest thing I could find. I moved toward the basement door. It was located in the hallway off the kitchen, a simple white door that I usually kept closed. I put my hand on the knob. The brass was cold. I could still hear the faint sound. muffled now by the floorboards. A rhythmic sobbing. I ripped the door open. The sound stopped. Instantly. The moment the latch clicked and the door swung inward, the crying cut off as if a wire had been severed. "Hello?" I screamed down the stairs, sweeping the beam of the flashlight into the dark. Nothing. Just the smell of damp concrete and old fabric softener. I flipped the light switch at the top of the stairs. The single bulb in the center of the basement flickered to life, casting long, stark shadows across the unfinished space. I walked down the wooden steps, one by one. The wood creaked under my weight. I checked the laundry area. Empty. I checked behind the furnace. Empty. I checked the storage corner where we kept the Christmas decorations. Empty. The basement was silent. Dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the dehumidifier in the corner. I stood in the center of the concrete floor, feeling foolish. My heart was still racing, but the adrenaline was souring into confusion. I went back upstairs. Marco was waiting in the kitchen doorway, looking hesitant to cross the threshold. "There is no one down there." I said. He looked surprised. "Really? But I heard it. You heard it." "I did." I said. I rubbed my temples. Maybe it was the pipes? Or an animal in the vent? Marco looked doubtful. That sounded like a person. "Ms. Stewart, I know what it sounded like." I snapped, then immediately softened. "I am sorry. I am just rattled." I checked the window well from the inside. The latch was rusted shut. It had not been opened in years. The glass was unbroken. If someone had been in the well, they were gone now. But Marco had been standing right there. It must have been the wind, I said, trying to convince myself, or maybe a radio frequency interference. Marco nodded slowly, putting his cap back on. "Yeah, maybe. Old houses, right? They make weird noises." He finished the lawn in silence. I paid him via the app and added a generous tip, mostly out of guilt for snapping at him. When the white truck pulled away, I locked the front door. Then I locked the back door. Then I went around and checked every single window on the first floor. That night, the house felt hostile. I ordered Thai food but could only manage 2 bites of the pad Thai before putting the carton in the fridge. I poured a glass of Sauvignon Blanc and sat in the living room, leaving the lights on. I tried to read a book, but my eyes kept darting to the hallway that led to the basement door. At 10:30, I decided to go to bed. I walked up the stairs, the carpet soft under my bare feet. My bedroom was at the end of the hall. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and climbed into bed. Pulling the duvet up to my chin, I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan. And then I heard it again. It was fainter this time, coming up through the floor vents. Sob, sob, gasp. It was rhythmic. I held my breath. Sob, sob, gasp. It was exactly the same. The spacing between the breaths was identical. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. My hands were trembling again. I opened the voice memo app and hit the red record button. I held the phone out over the edge of the bed, straining to capture the sound. I listened for a full minute. The sound continued. It sounded like someone crying into a pillow. Deep in the bowels of the house, I stopped the recording and played it back, turning the volume all the way up. White noise, the sound of the house settling, the hum of the refrigerator downstairs. But no crying. I played it again, pressing the speaker to my ear. There was nothing, just static. It was as if the sound existed on a frequency my phone could not catch, or as if my brain was fabricating it entirely. I threw the covers off and marched into the hallway. The sound stopped. I stood there, shivering in my pajamas. The house was playing games with me. I needed to talk to someone. I could not call my parents. They would worry too much. I could not call the police. I had no proof, and I did not want to be the hysterical woman who called 911 because of a noise. I called Evan. My ex-husband answered on the 4th ring. His voice was thick with sleep. "Ariana, is everything okay?" "It is almost 11. I am sorry." I said, "I know it is late. I need to ask you something." "What is it?" "Is Lila okay?" "Lila is fine. She's at camp. This is about the house." There was a pause. "What about the house?" Did you keep a key? I asked. When we finalized the settlement, did you keep a copy of the house key? Evan sighed, a long, weary exhale that I knew well. Ari, we went over this. I gave you my key. I gave you Lila's spare. Why are you asking me this now? I heard something. I said, in the basement. I thought, maybe you came by to pick something up and forgot to tell me? I heard the rustle of sheets on his end. I am not in your basement. Ariana, I am in my apartment, in bed, alone. I know. I said quickly, I just wanted to check. You sound paranoid. He said. His tone shifted from sleepy to something sharper. Are you off your meds? I am not on meds, Evan. You know that. Well, maybe you should be. Look, this is exactly what I was talking about last month. That house is too big for you. It is old. It has issues. It does not have issues. I defended automatically. It makes noises. Evan said, it has drafts. And clearly, it is making you anxious. You are there all alone. Ari, anything could happen. A pipe bursts. A wire shorts out. Or someone breaks in. He said it casually, but the words landed like stones. I am fine. I said, you do not sound fine. You sound scared. Listen, maybe you should just stay at a hotel for the week. Or, we could revisit the conversation about selling. I know a guy who specializes in moving properties in Briar Glen fast. Safe neighborhoods, newer builds, gated communities. I gripped the phone tighter. Why are you bringing this up now? I am just trying to help, he said, sounding offended. You call me in the middle of the night freaking out about basement noises. I am offering a solution. Get out of that money pit. Move somewhere safer, for Lila's sake. The mention of Lila made my spine stiffen. The house is safe. Evan, forget I called. I hung up before he could say anything else. I did not sleep well. I dozed in fitful bursts, waking up every hour to listen to the silence. The crying did not return that night, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The next morning, the sun was bright and blinding. It washed out the fear of the night. Making the shadows retreat, I made coffee, strong and black, and took it out to the back patio. My neighbor, Daphne Klein, was in her garden. Daphne was a woman in her 60s with silver hair cropped short and a penchant for oversized floral gardening gloves. She waved when she saw me. Morning. Ariana? Where's the little one? Camp, I said, forcing a smile. Leadership retreat? Oh, lovely. Must be quiet over there. Too quiet, I admitted. I walked over to the low wooden fence that separated our yards. Daphne, can I ask you something odd? Daphne pulled off a glove. Ask away. Do these houses have any history of weird acoustics, like basement noises? Daphne laughed. A sharp, bird-like sound. Honey, these houses were built in the 50s. They wheeze and groan like old men. Why? Hearing ghosts? Something like that. Daphne leaned against the fence. Back when they built this tract. It was during the height of the Cold War scare. A lot of the original owners put in storm rooms, or panic rooms, I guess you would call them now. I frowned. A storm room? Yeah, reinforced partitions in the basement, thick concrete. Some of them were hidden. Realtors used to market it as a selling point in Briar Glen. Bomb-proof your family. That sort of thing. My mind flashed back to the inspection report I had skimmed 3 years ago when we bought the place. There had been a line item in the structural section. Non-standard basement partition noted on north wall. I had ignored it, assuming it was just a weird architectural choice for a laundry hookup. Hidden? I asked. Some were. Behind shelving or false walls. People were paranoid back then. Wanted to disappear if the big one hit. I thanked Daphne and went back inside. My coffee had gone cold. I went to the kitchen and opened the utility drawer again. I took out the flashlight. I opened the basement door. The air down there was cool. I walked down the stairs, the steps counting down in my head. 1, 2, 3, 12. I stood on the concrete slab. I looked at the north wall. It was lined with heavy wooden shelving units that came with the house. They were filled with old paint cans, holiday bins, and Evan's collection of vintage National Geographics that he had never bothered to claim. I walked over to the middle shelf. It was a massive thing, built of solid oak. It looked like it had been there since the house was built. I shone the flashlight at the floor, near the base of the shelf. The concrete was stained and dusty, but right near the legs of the shelf, there were marks, scuffs, fresh, bright scratches in the gray dust. They curved outward, as if the shelf had been swung open like a door. I froze. I had never moved this shelf. It was too heavy. I had never touched it. I set the flashlight on a stack of magazines, aiming the beam at the wall. I gripped the side of the shelving unit. I braced my feet and pulled. It was heavy, but it moved. It swung outward on hidden hinges that squealed in the silence. My breath hitched. Behind the shelf was not just a concrete wall. There was a panel, a seam in the plasterboard that did not match the rest of the texture. I ran my fingers over it. It was cold. I pushed on it. It had a little give, but it was locked or jammed. I stepped back, my heart hammering against my ribs. But this time, the sensation was different. Yesterday, I had felt panic. I had felt like a victim in a horror movie, reacting to noises I could not explain. But scuff marks were real. Hidden hinges were real. Someone had been here, and recently, the dust did not lie. The scratches were new. The crying I had heard. Marco had said it sounded like it was coming from the window well. But the window well was right above this wall. If there was a device, or a speaker. I looked at the scuff marks again. The fear did not leave, but it changed. It hardened. It crystallized into something cold and sharp. I was not crazy. I was not imagining things. I picked up the flashlight. I swung the shelf back into place, careful to line it up with the marks. I wanted it to look undisturbed. If someone had been coming in here, they had a way in, a key I did not know about, a lock I had not secured. I walked back up the stairs. But I did not run this time. I walked with purpose. I locked the basement door from the kitchen side. I wedged a chair under the knob. Then I went to the living room and sat down. I did not turn on the TV. I did not call Evan. I sat in the silence, and for the first time, I listened not with dread, but with a hunter's focus. You want to play games? I thought, okay, let us play. I sat on the front porch steps, wrapping my cardigan tighter around my chest as the blue and red lights of the patrol car washed over the hydrangeas. It was a silent display. No siren. Just the strobe effect bouncing off the siding of my house and the neighbor's fence. In Briar Glen, a police cruiser in a driveway was an event. Curtains across the street twitched. I saw Daphne Klein's silhouette in her bay window, watching. Officer Tessa Monroe was kind. She was younger than me, perhaps 28, with a tight ponytail and eyes that looked tired. She had walked the perimeter. She had gone into the basement with her heavy tactical flashlight. She had even checked the attic access. Now, she stood on my porch, her notebook closed in her hand. "Ms. Stewart," she said gently, "the house is secure. There are no signs of forced entry at the doors or windows. The basement is empty. I know it looks empty," I said, trying to keep the desperate edge out of my voice. "But I told you about the shelf, the scuff marks. Someone moved it." Monroe nodded. Shifting her weight, I saw the marks, but in a basement that is used for storage. Things get bumped. Maybe you moved it looking for something a while ago and forgot? Stress can do funny things to memory. I did not move it. I insisted. And the crying. The lawn guy heard it too. Did he? Monroe looked at her notes. You said he heard a noise. Wind through a window well can sound like a lot of things. Whistling, moaning, even crying. She was managing me. I could feel it. To her. I was the divorced mother alone in a big house, jumpy because her kid was away. I am not imagining this. Officer. I am not saying you are imagining the noise, Monroe said. I am saying there is no evidence of a crime. No intruder, no theft, no vandalism. Without that, there is not much I can do. She adjusted her belt. My advice? Change the locks. Maybe get some cameras. It might give you peace of mind. I have cameras. I said, "They did not pick up anything." Monroe gave me a sympathetic, tight-lipped smile. "Then maybe that is your answer." "Ma'am, if the cameras did not see anyone, and I cannot find anyone, maybe the house is just settling. Try to get some sleep. Call us if you see someone actually trying to get in." She walked back to her cruiser. I watched her leave. I felt small. I felt unheard. But beneath the humiliation, the cold knot in my stomach was tightening. She had told me to change the locks. That was actionable. That was a project step. I went inside and locked the door. I pulled up Google on my phone and searched for 24-hour locksmiths. I did not want the local hardware store guy who knew everyone. I wanted a professional security firm. I called Lockwell Security and Glass. They sent a technician out within the hour. His name was distinct on his invoice. Arthur Penhaligon. He was a man of few words, heavy-set with grease-stained fingers, and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. "I want everything rekeyed," I told him. "Front, back, side, and the deadbolts. I want high-security cylinders." Arthur nodded and went to work. I followed him, hovering, watching his hands. He started at the front door, dismantling the mechanism with practiced ease. He moved to the side door that led into the kitchen from the driveway. He paused there. He pulled the cylinder out and held it up to the light. He squinted at it, then pulled a magnifying loupe from his pocket. "Ma'am?" he said. "Yes. How long have you lived here?" 3 years. "And you have not changed the lock since you moved in?" "No. Just the day we closed." Arthur turned the small brass cylinder in his fingers. "This is not the original lock." "What do you mean?" "I mean this cylinder is brand new. The pins are shiny. There is no graphite buildup, no brass dust. And—" he turned it over. "It is a different brand than the housing. See this stamp? This is a generic replacement you buy at a big box store. The rest of your hardware is Baldwin." I stared at the piece of metal. "Someone changed my lock?" Arthur looked at me, his expression grave. "No. Someone swapped the cylinder. This is a common trick if you want access without picking the lock every time. You bump the lock, swap the core for one you have a key to, and then you can come and go as you please. Most homeowners never notice because their key stops working, and they think the lock is just jammed. My key worked, though," I whispered. Arthur shook his head. "Did it? Or did you just use the deadbolt?" I froze. We almost always use the garage keypad to enter. The side door was mostly used by Evan. When he came to pick up Lila. "Arthur," I said, my voice trembling. "Can you tell when it was installed?" "Not exactly. But recently, within the last month or two, the lubrication is still wet." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty house. Someone had not just broken in. Someone had engineered a way to walk in. "Change it." I said, "Change all of them, and put on a reinforcement plate." Arthur worked for 2 more hours. When he handed me the new keys, 4 of them, heavy and sharp, I felt a momentary flash of safety, but it was brittle. The next morning, Marco from Everbright returned. He had left the job unfinished when the panic started the day before, and being the professional he was, he came back to edge the walkways and blow off the driveway. I walked out to meet him. I needed to apologize. I needed to know I had not scared him off. "Ms. Stewart," he said, tipping his cap. He looked sheepish. "Marco, I am so sorry about yesterday." I said, "I was not myself." No, he said quickly. "I get it. I have kids too. If I thought I heard one of them crying, I would have torn the house down." He paused, looking down at his work boots. "Actually, I wanted to tell you something. I felt bad I did not say it yesterday." "What is it?" "I hesitated to call you yesterday because, well, you know how it is. You do not want to be the guy who scares the homeowner for no reason. But the reason I was paying attention to the house, I saw a car." "A car?" "Yeah. Earlier in the week. Tuesday, I think. I was doing the neighbor's lawn, Mrs. Klein, and I saw this black SUV parked down the street, just sitting there, engine running." I frowned. "It is a public street." "Marco, people park. Yeah, but this guy had a magnet on the door. You know, Like a business vehicle. It looked official. Do you remember what it said? Marco squinted at the sky. Thinking, Marrowgate. Marrowgate Holdings. I think. Had a logo like a little pillar or something. I thought maybe they were assessors or something. But the guy inside was just watching your house. He had binoculars. Ms. Stewart, binoculars. My mouth went dry. Marrowgate Holdings. The name meant nothing to me, but the image of a strange car watching my home was visceral. Thank you. Marco, I said. That is good to know. I went inside and immediately wrote the name down on a notepad. Marrowgate Holdings. I sat at my kitchen island. My laptop was open. The project manager in me was waking up. When a site goes wrong, when materials go missing or timelines slip, you do not panic. You audit. You track. You document. I needed to check my perimeter. Not just the physical one, but the financial one. If someone was watching the house, were they watching the rest of my life? I logged into my mortgage portal. Harbor Light Community Credit. The balance was correct. The payment history was clean. I called the customer service line. I navigated the automated hell of menus until I got a live person. A woman named Brenda. Harbor Light Community Credit. Brenda speaking. How can I help you? Hi, Brenda. This is Ariana Stewart. I'm just calling to do a security check on my account. I have had some identity theft concerns recently. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Ms. Stewart, let me pull up your file. I gave her my security answers. I heard her typing. Everything looks normal here, Brenda said. Current on payments. Escrow is balanced. Has anyone called? I asked. Anyone other than me? Let me check the notes. There was a long silence. The typing stopped. Brenda? Ms. Stewart? Brenda said. Her voice different now. Guarded. Did you request a loss mitigation packet last Thursday? No. I said, what is a loss mitigation packet? It is the paperwork you request when you are anticipating defaulting on your loan. For pre-foreclosure assistance or a short sale. I stood up. No, I did not request that. I have never missed a payment. I have excellent credit. Okay, Brenda said slowly. It shows here that a request was logged on the 29th. The packet was mailed out to your address. Who requested it? I demanded. Was it a call? An email? It says it was a portal request. From your login. That is impossible. I said, no one has my login. Ms. Stewart, I can cancel the request. But if your credentials were used, cancel it, I snapped, and flag the account. No changes without verbal password confirmation. I hung up, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. A loss mitigation packet. Someone was trying to create a paper trail that said I was failing, that I was broke, that I was ready to lose the house. I took a deep breath. Stop shaking, I told myself. Start working. I went to the dining room table. I swept off the placemats and the decorative bowl. I went to the mudroom and grabbed my camera. A real DSLR I used for site visits. I started a new notebook. Timeline. Tuesday. Black SUV. Marrowgate Holdings. Watching house. Wednesday. Approx. Unauthorized lock cylinder discovered. Thursday. Loss mitigation packet requested via compromised login. Yesterday. Crying sound. Scuffed floor. Hidden panel. I looked at the list. It was not random. It was a campaign. I picked up the camera and walked to the basement door. I unlocked it. I removed the chair I had wedged under the knob. I went down. I did not feel the ghostly fear of yesterday. I felt the cold, hard anger of a woman who realizes someone is trying to gaslight her into oblivion. I turned on every light. I went to the shelf. I photographed the scuffs on the floor. I photographed the seam in the wall. Then I looked up. If Marco heard the sound from the window well, and I heard it from the basement. The source had to be near the ceiling line on the north wall. I dragged a stepladder over. I examined the joists, the insulation, and then I saw it. There was a vent cover screwed into the drywall of the ceiling, right near the window well access. It looked like an old HVAC return, but the screws were silver, shiny. The rest of the hardware in the basement was dull, oxidized steel. I climbed the ladder. I took a screwdriver from my back pocket. I unscrewed the 4 screws. They turned easily, biting into fresh wood. I pulled the grate down. It was not a duct. It was a cavity between the joists. Sitting there, taped to the subfloor with black electrical tape, was a small black box. It was about the size of a deck of cards. A red wire ran from it to a battery pack holding 4 D-cell batteries. I pulled it free. The tape ripped with a loud shriek. I climbed down the ladder and set the device on the workbench. It was cheap. I recognized the components from my college days in engineering electives: a Raspberry Pi Zero, a small speaker driver, and a battery housing. There was a small switch on the side. I flipped it. Nothing happened for 5 seconds. Then, sob, sob, gasp. The sound was tinny, unamplified, but distinct. It was the sound I had heard in the dark. I stared at it. The relief hit me first. It was not a ghost. It was not a child trapped in the walls. No one was hurt. Then came the nausea. Someone had built this. Someone had programmed it to loop. Someone had come into my house, opened my basement ceiling, and installed this thing specifically to terrorize me, to make me question my own mind. I took a picture of it, then I took a video of it playing the sound. I put it in a Ziploc bag, batteries and all. I went upstairs and called Evan. He answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said, "feeling better today?" I looked at the Ziploc bag on the counter. "I found it." "Evan, found what?" "The crying. It was a machine, a speaker hidden in the basement ceiling." There was a pause, a long, thick silence. "What? That is crazy. Ari? A machine?" "I have it on the counter." Someone broke in and installed it. "Ariana," he said, his voice dropping to that reasonable, soothing tone that used to make me feel safe and now made my skin crawl. "Are you sure it is not? Are you sure you did not put it there?" I blinked. "Excuse me? Sleepwalking? Or, sometimes when we are under a lot of stress, we do things we do not remember. Why would someone put a speaker in your basement? To scare me. Evan, to make me leave. Who would do that? I do not know, but I found a new lock on the back door too. Someone has a key. Ari, listen to yourself. Secret locks? Hidden speakers? This sounds manic." He was doing it again. He was pivoting the reality to fit a narrative where I was the problem. "I am not manic," I said, my voice deadly calm. "I am calling the police again. I have evidence now." "Wait," Evan said. His voice spiked. "Do not drag the police into this yet. Think about Lila." "What about Lila?" "If you file a report saying you are finding listening devices and secret plots, and it turns out to be nothing, it is going to look bad. For custody. You know how the courts are about stability." I gripped the phone. "Are you threatening me?" "No. God. No. I am protecting you. I am just saying, maybe it is just the house. You know how old it is. Weird wiring, old intercom systems. Maybe you found something that has been there for 20 years and you're just noticing it now because you are on edge." I looked at the shiny screws, the fresh electrical tape, the Raspberry Pi that was definitely not manufactured in 1955. "It is brand new." "Evan, maybe," he said. "Or maybe it just looks new to you. Look, I can come over. I can take a look at it. We can figure this out together. You do not need the cops sniffing around, making a scene in the neighborhood." I realized then that he was not listening. Or rather, he was listening, but he had already decided on the outcome. The house was unsafe. I was unstable. The solution was for me to leave. "I do not need you to come over," I said. "I will handle it." I hung up. My hand was trembling again, but this time it was rage. Maybe it is just the house. That was the script. I heard the mail slot clatter. I walked to the front door. A stack of envelopes lay on the mat. Bills, flyers, and a thick, cream-colored envelope with a return address in embossed black ink. Caldwell Reeve Conflict Solutions. I opened it. The letter inside was printed on heavy bond paper. "Dear Ms. Stewart, we represent a private party interested in the community welfare of Briar Glen. It has come to our attention that recent structural and environmental concerns regarding your property at 44 Elm Street may be creating an untenable living situation. Our client is prepared to offer expedited relocation mediation. This package includes full market value buyout, moving assistance, and a temporary housing stipend to ensure your immediate safety and comfort. We understand that maintaining a historic property as a single occupant can be overwhelming. We are here to help you transition to a more manageable environment. I read it twice. Community safety concerns. Single occupant. Overwhelming. It read like a lifeline. It read like a generous offer from a concerned neighbor. But the timing, the crying starts on Thursday. The loss mitigation packet on Thursday. The letter arrives on Friday. It was a pincer movement. Squeeze me with fear from the inside. Squeeze me with financial doubt from the bank. And then, offer the golden parachute. Just take the offer. Just leave. You are too weak to handle this house. You are hearing things. You are alone. I looked at the Ziploc bag with the speaker. I looked at the letter. If I showed this to the police, without context, they would see a generous offer. If I showed them the speaker, Evan would tell them I planted it myself in a fit of hysteria. They were banking on my fear. They were banking on me crumbling. And the worst part was, I was terrified. I was terrified that if I fought this, they would come for Lila. They would use my paranoia to paint me as unfit. Evan had already laid the groundwork. I walked into the kitchen. I poured the rest of the cold coffee down the sink. I could not explode. I could not scream. I could not post a rant on Facebook about how my ex-husband's associates were gaslighting me. That is exactly what they wanted. A public meltdown. A reason to step in and save Lila from her crazy mother. I took the letter and placed it in the center of the dining table. Next to the lock cylinder and the speaker, I took a photo of the tableau. Then I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Project. Revenge. I typed the first entry. Objective. Prove intent. Secure chain of evidence. Do not engage until leverage is acquired. I was not going to run. I was going to dig in. I picked up my phone. I needed a lawyer. Not a divorce lawyer. Not a real estate lawyer. I needed a shark. I searched for litigation attorneys, intimidation fraud, Massachusetts. I scrolled past the billboards. I looked for the small firms, the ones with serious websites and no smiling faces. I found a name. Rourke Senate Legal. I dialed the number. Hello? I said when the receptionist answered, My name is Ariana Stewart. I am being targeted by a coordinated harassment campaign designed to force the sale of my home. I have physical evidence, and I need to speak to Maya Rourke immediately. I waited on hold. The silence of the house pressed in on me, but this time, I did not listen for crying. I listened for the enemy, and I was ready. The office of Rourke and Senate Legal was not located in a glass tower downtown. It was tucked away in a converted brownstone in Cambridge, the kind of place with creaky floorboards and the smell of old dust and expensive coffee. I sat in a leather wingback chair that felt too large for me, clutching a manila folder so tightly my knuckles were white. Maya Rourke walked in 5 minutes late. She was a woman of sharp angles, sharp jaw, sharp eyes, and a haircut that looked like it had been drafted with a protractor. She did not apologize. She sat down, opened a fresh legal pad, and looked at me. Tell me the facts, she said. Not the feelings. The facts. I laid it out. The crying sound, the hidden device, the lock cylinder, the loss mitigation packet, the letter from Caldwell and Reeve. I spoke for 10 minutes without stopping, my voice steady, my training as a project manager overriding the terrified mother inside me. When I finished, Maya leaned back. She tapped her pen against her chin. You want to scream, she said. It was not a question. I do. I admitted. I want to go to the police and scream that my ex-husband is trying to gaslight me out of my home. Do not, she said. Her voice was low and hard. That is exactly what they are waiting for. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray street. Ariana, this is a playbook. I have seen it in corporate buyouts and high-stakes divorces. The goal is not to hurt you physically. It is to trigger a reactive behavior event. They prod you. They scare you. They mess with your sleep and your finances. They wait for you to snap. And the moment you call the cops sounding hysterical, or scream at a neighbor, or post a paranoid rant on social media, they win. Why? I asked. Because then the narrative changes, she said, turning back to me. It is no longer about a woman being harassed. It is about a woman who is unstable, an unfit mother, a safety risk to herself and others. If they can get a police report that says you were hallucinating or acting erratic, they can use that to force a sale, or worse, challenge your custody. I felt a cold shiver slide down my spine. Evan had already said it. Maybe you should be on meds. So what do I do? I asked. Just take it? No, Maya said. She sat down and smiled. But it was not a nice smile. It was a predator's smile. You become a black hole. You absorb everything and you give nothing back. No reaction, no public outbursts. We document everything. We treat this like a hostile takeover, because that is exactly what it is. She pulled a form from her drawer. First, we stop the bleeding at the bank. I am filing a formal preservation notice with Harborlight Community Credit. We are not just asking for records. We are legally mandating that they preserve every digital footprint associated with your account, if someone inside is helping them. We are going to catch them. She slid the paper across the desk. Sign here. And Ariana? Yes? Get offline. If they have your bank login, they might have your email. They might have your cloud backups. Assume everything you type on a connected device is being read. I signed the paper. The scratch of the pen sounded loud in the quiet room. I left her office feeling heavier, yet strangely grounded. I had a strategy. Silence was my shield. The drive home was tense. Every black SUV I saw made me check my rearview mirror. I went straight to the hardware store, but not the one in town. I drove 2 towns over to a specialized security supply shop called Northline Secure Tech. I did not want a system that uploaded to the cloud. I did not want Ring or Nest or anything that Evan could hack with a guest password. I bought a 4-camera hardwired system with a local DVR, a heavy black box that recorded to an internal hard drive. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. If you wanted to see the footage, you had to be standing in my basement. The technician, a guy named Sal with a thick Boston accent, offered to come install it the next day, but I paid extra for an emergency evening appointment. I want it done tonight, I said. By 8 o'clock, my house was wired. I had cameras covering the driveway, the front door, the back patio, and most importantly, the side yard with the window wells. The monitor sat on my desk in the study, a grid of 4 grayscale views. I watched the screen for a long time. The wind blew the oak trees. A cat walked across the driveway. It was mundane. It was boring. But it was mine. I was sitting there, watching the monitor. When my cell phone rang, I looked at the ID, Neighborhood Wellness. I did not recognize the name. I hesitated, then remembered Maya's advice. Document everything. I swiped answer and put it on speaker. I grabbed my other phone, my old work phone, and hit record. Hello? I said, keeping my voice flat. Good evening. Ms. Stewart? A woman's voice said. She sounded warm, maternal, sickeningly sweet. My name is Sarah, and I am a volunteer with the Briar Glen Neighborhood Wellness Check-in. We are just reaching out to residents to see how everyone is coping with the recent stressors in the community. I frowned. What stressors? Oh, you know, the woman said vaguely. The construction noise, the traffic changes. We have had some reports of residents feeling anxious or having trouble sleeping. I stared at the phone. There was no construction noise. I am sleeping fine. Thank you, I said. That is good to hear, she said. She paused. We have also had a few people mention hearing odd noises at night, like humming or voices. Have you experienced anything like that? The trap was so clumsy it was almost insulting. If I said yes, she would log it. Subject admits to hearing voices. No, I said, it is very quiet here. Are you sure? She pressed. Her voice dropped an octave, becoming more intimate. You are living alone right now, correct? It is perfectly normal to feel a little jumpy when the house is empty, if you ever feel like you are hearing things that are not there. We have resources. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but not from fear, from anger. They were calling me to gaslight me over the phone. Neighborhood wellness did not exist. I knew every committee in Briar Glen. I was the project manager for the library renovation. There was no wellness committee. I saved the recording. I named the file attempted manipulation _ wellness call. I went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. I needed to cool down. A knock at the back door made me jump. I spun around, water sloshing onto the floor. It was Marco. He was standing on the patio, illuminated by the new motion sensor light I had installed. He looked uncomfortable. I unlocked the door but left the chain on. Marco? It is 9 o'clock. I know. Ms. Stewart, I am sorry. I saw your lights were on. I left my gloves earlier. I unchained the door. It was a lie, and we both knew it. Marco Daines was a professional. He did not leave equipment behind. He stepped into the mudroom, twisting his cap in his hands. I did not come for the gloves. He admitted. I waited. I have been thinking about it all day. He said, that sound, the crying. I told you. Marco. I said carefully, I handled it. It turned out to be a mechanical issue. He looked at me, his dark eyes serious. Ms. Stewart, I know what a mechanical issue sounds like. That was a recording. And here is the thing I did not tell you yesterday because I did not want to sound crazy. What? When I first heard it? Before I called you? I was not near the window. I was by the truck. I frowned. The truck was in the driveway, 50 feet away. It was loud? I asked. No. He said, that is the thing. It sounded like it was coming from the bushes, like someone was testing it. I heard a click, then a snippet of the crying, then a click. Like on-off, then silence. I walked over to the bushes, and that is when I heard it coming from the window well. Softer this time. Constant. I stared at him. You think someone was outside? I think someone set it up right before I got there, Marco said, and they tested the volume. They wanted to make sure it was loud enough to be heard from the yard, but not loud enough to reach the street. He looked at the floor. I felt like I should tell you, because if they were testing it, they were watching to see if I noticed. A cold knot formed in my stomach. They used Marco. They knew the lawn crew was coming. They planted the device, tested it, and then waited for him to hear it and call me. Why? To validate it. If I heard it alone, I could be dismissed as paranoid. If the lawn guy hears it, it becomes a fact. It becomes an event. Thank you. Marco. I said, you have no idea how important that is. He nodded. You be careful. Ms. Stewart, there are weird things happening. After he left, I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. Then I went to the basement. I needed to see the window well from the inside again. I dragged the stepladder back over to the north wall. I climbed up until my face was level with the dirty glass. The window was locked, but the latch was old. I shone my flashlight through the glass, illuminating the corrugated metal semicircle of the well outside. The metal grate that covered the top of the well was secured with 2 bolts. I pressed my face against the glass. There were scratches on the metal lip of the well, right where the grate met the siding. Bright, silver scratches, fresh metal exposed to the air, and there was something else. Caught on the jagged edge of one of the bolts was a tiny smear of color. I squinted. It was blue, a bright, electric blue. It looked like paint transfer. Like someone had used a tool, a pry bar or a screwdriver, that was painted blue, and it had scraped against the bolt when they were wrenching the grate open in a hurry. I did not own any blue tools. My toolkit was a standard red and black set from Home Depot. Evan's tools, which he had taken with him, were yellow DeWalt, blue. I took a picture of it through the glass. It was not perfect, but the flash caught the color, industrial blue. I climbed down. My mind was racing. Marco said they tested it. They opened the grate, dropped the speaker into the ceiling void from the outside, probably removing the vent cover I found, tested the sound, and then sealed it back up. They did not break in through the door. They accessed the basement through the window well, which meant they knew that specific window led to a drop ceiling void. They knew the anatomy of the house better than I did. I went back upstairs to my laptop. I had an email from Maya. Subject: Title search. Results: 44 Elm Street. I opened it. Attached was a PDF of a property title history dating back to 1950. Ariana. The email read, I did some digging into the property lines. Look at page 4. There is an expired easement from 1982. I scrolled to page 4. Grant of easement. Granted to Briar Glen utility parcel for access to subterranean drainage partition. Expired 1998. Briar Glen utility parcel. I googled the name. Defunct. Assets acquired by Redwood Fidelity Services in 2005. Redwood Fidelity Services. My heart stopped. Redwood Fidelity was the parent company of the firm where Evan's stepfather, Gordon Pell, sat on the board. It was a tenuous connection, but it was there, an old easement, a legal right-of-way that technically did not exist anymore, but could be resurrected if someone wanted to make a case for emergency access or infrastructure review. Maya's voice echoed in my head. Legal noise. They were digging up ghosts. They were using a 40-year-old piece of paper to justify having men in SUVs watching my house, if anyone asked. They were just surveying a potential utility conflict. It gave them cover. I closed the laptop. I felt exposed. The walls of the house felt thin. I needed to know who else they had touched. The next morning was Saturday. The neighborhood was alive with the sound of lawnmowers and children playing. It was a surreal contrast to the siege warfare I felt I was conducting. I walked over to Daphne's house. She was weeding her petunias. Daphne, I said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She looked up, wiping sweat from her forehead. Of course. Dear, you look pale. Are you eating? I am fine. But I need to know. Has anyone approached you about me? Or the house? Daphne hesitated. She looked toward the street, then back at me. Well, she said slowly, not about you, exactly. But a man came by on Wednesday. Said he was a property assessor for the county. Did he show ID? He had a lanyard. I did not look close. He was asking about the drainage in the neighborhood. Asked if I had experienced any basement flooding. And then he asked if the neighbors were having issues. He pointed at your house specifically. He asked if the single lady next door had trouble keeping up with the maintenance. I clenched my jaw. What did you say? I told him you were the most organized person I know and to mind his own business, Daphne said, bristling. But he was pushy. Ariana, he asked if I ever saw strange people coming and going, like he was fishing for gossip. Thank you. Daphne. I walked across the street to the Miller house. The Millers were a young couple, always jogging, always polite. I caught Tim Miller washing his car. Tim, I said, quick question. Has anyone knocked on your door asking about the neighborhood lately? Tim looked uncomfortable. He glanced at his wife, who was on the porch. Yeah, actually, he said. A guy came by a few days ago. Said he was with a neighborhood watch startup? Neighborhood wellness, I guessed. Yeah, that was it. He handed me a flyer. Said they were looking for community partners to keep an eye out for safety risks. Did he mention me? Tim rubbed the back of his neck. He said they had reports of erratic activity at number 44. He offered us $50 a week to just, log any weird cars or loud noises we heard coming from your place. $50 a week? They were bribing my neighbors to spy on me. I told him we did not want to get involved. Tim said quickly, but it was weird. Ariana, the guy had a clipboard with your address already written at the top. I felt a wave of dizziness. It was not just harassment. It was a containment zone. They were building a cage out of my neighbor's eyes. I walked back to my driveway. I stood there, looking at my house. It looked beautiful in the sunlight. The brick was warm. The ivy was green. But it felt like a stage set. I went inside and added the neighbor interviews to my timeline. Wednesday. Daphne approached by assessor, fishing for maintenance issues. Thursday. Millers approached by neighborhood wellness, offered cash for surveillance. I was typing this when my phone buzzed on the desk. I looked at the screen. It was a text from Evan. My thumb hovered over the glass. I did not want to open it. I knew, instinctively, that it was going to hurt. I opened it. Evan. Ari, please don't make this ugly. Just take the offer. It is a good price and you can start over. Lila needs you sane, not fighting a war you can't win. I stared at the words. The room went silent. Just take the offer. I had never told Evan about the offer. I had never mentioned the letter from Caldwell and Reeve. I had never mentioned the expedited relocation mediation. I had kept that letter sitting on my dining room table, photographed but undiscussed. The only people who knew about the offer were me. Maya Rourke, and the people who sent it. Evan knew. He was not just a concerned bystander. He was not just a complicit ex-husband who looked the other way. He was in the loop. He knew the numbers. He knew the timeline. Lila needs you sane. The threat was veiled. But it was there. If you fight this, we will prove you are insane. I put the phone down. I felt a crack in my chest, a physical sensation of something breaking. It was the last shred of trust I had held for the man I had been married to for 10 years. I had thought he was weak. I had thought he was being manipulated by his stepfather, but he was part of the machine. I picked up the phone again. I did not reply. Instead, I took a screenshot of the text. I emailed it to Maya. Subject: proof of complicity. Body: he knows about the offer. I never told him. I sat back in my chair. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. There was only a cold, hard clarity. They wanted a war. They had picked the wrong project manager. I pulled up the footage from my new cameras. I rewound the timeline to the moment I walked outside to talk to the neighbors. I saw myself on the screen, small and determined, walking down the driveway. And then I saw something else. In the corner of the frame, parked 3 houses down, just visible through the trees, a dark sedan. As I walked back up my driveway in the video, the sedan pulled away slowly. I zoomed in. The resolution was grainy, but I could see the license plate frame. It was blue, industrial blue, same as the paint on the window well. I saved the clip. I was not the one trapped in this house with them. They were trapped in the evidence file with me. I picked up my pen and wrote the header for the next page of my notebook. The corporate veil is not a solid wall. It is a series of curtains, layers of silk and velvet designed to obscure the machinery behind the stage. But if you know where to look, and if you have the patience of a project manager who has spent a decade auditing supply chains, you can always find a gap in the fabric. I spent Saturday night and Sunday morning drowning in public records. My dining room table, once the site of family breakfasts and homework sessions, had become a war room. I had stacks of printed PDFs, highlighter pens in 4 colors, and a pot of coffee that had been reheated 3 times. I started with the letter from Caldwell and Reeve Conflict Solutions. The return address was a suite in a generic office park in Burlington. I ran the business entity search on the Secretary of State website. Caldwell and Reeve was a registered LLC, formed 3 years ago. The managers were listed as 2 lawyers I had never heard of. But the registered agent, the entity designated to receive legal papers, was a company called C&R Holdings. I pulled the file for C&R Holdings. It was a shell. No employees, no website, just a mailing address in Delaware. This is where most people stop. This is where they want you to stop. But I knew that Delaware requires an annual franchise tax report, and while the names of the owners can be hidden, the authorized signatories often leave a trail. I dug deeper. I paid $50 for a premium report from a data aggregator service. C&R Holdings had a single managing member, a trust called the Redwood Advisory Group. I froze. My cursor hovered over the name, Redwood. I opened a new tab and typed in Redwood Fidelity Services. This was the company my ex-husband's family had built. It was a mid-sized financial services firm, respectable, boring, and wealthy. Evan did not work there. He had tried to forge his own path in sales. But his stepfather, Gordon Pell, was the patriarch. Gordon was the kind of man who wore cufflinks to Sunday brunch and spoke about the economy as if it were a pet he was training. I went to the Redwood Fidelity website. I clicked on our leadership. There he was, Gordon Pell, senior advisor to the board. I looked back at my notes. Caldwell and Reeve, the firm that sent me a letter implying my home was unsafe and offering a buyout, was owned by a holding company managed by a trust connected to Gordon Pell. It was not illegal. Wealthy families often have complex webs of investments. It was not a crime for a company Gordon advised to own a mediation firm. But it was a conflict, a massive, glaring, ethical conflict. Gordon Pell was using a subsidiary to pressure his stepson's ex-wife into selling her home, all while hiding behind 3 layers of corporate anonymity. Why? Was it just about money? Did they want the land? Or was it, as Evan had hinted, about protecting Lila by removing me from the equation? I felt a surge of nausea, but I pushed it down. I added the printouts to the evidence file. I drew a line on my diagram connecting Caldwell and Reeve to Gordon Pell. The line was red. I needed to secure my flank. The bank. Monday morning. I drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over. I had arranged to meet Nolan Park, the compliance specialist at Harborlight Community Credit. I had found him through LinkedIn. Realizing we had a mutual connection in the construction industry, I had sent him a carefully worded message about irregular account activity and potential internal security breaches. He agreed to meet me, but only off-site. Nolan was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with wire-rimmed glasses and the nervous energy of a man who plays by the rules in a world that often ignores them. He sat in the back corner, nursing a black tea. "Ms. Stewart?" he asked as I approached. I sat down. "Thank you for meeting me." "Nolan." He looked around the shop. "I cannot stay long, and I cannot give you printouts. If I print anything, it logs a request ID. I understand." I said, "Just tell me what you saw." He leaned in. "I looked at the access log for your mortgage account. You were right to be concerned. The request for the loss mitigation packet, the one you said you did not initiate?" "Yes, it came from an internal terminal," Nolan said. His voice was a whisper. "Usually, when a customer requests a packet online, the log shows an external IP address and a session token from the web portal. But this request was generated by a user ID with admin privileges inside the bank's system." "Who?" I asked. "I cannot give you a name," Nolan said, looking pained. "I traced the ID. It belongs to a vendor credential. We use third-party contractors for IT maintenance and data migration. Sometimes they have broad access rights for testing purposes." "A contractor," I repeated. "Yes, the credential is tied to a company called—" He paused, glancing at his phone as if checking a text. "It is tied to a tech support vendor. But here's the strange part. The specific user who logged that request, their access was flagged for concurrent usage 10 minutes later. What does that mean? It means someone was logged in with that ID at the bank's server farm. And simultaneously, someone used the same ID to access the system from a remote VPN. It looks like a shared login, or a stolen one. Can you block it?" "I already did," Nolan said. "I flagged the account for enhanced review. No one can touch your file without a dual-factor authentication code sent to your phone. Not even the branch manager." "Thank you," I breathed. "You have no idea what this means to me." "Ms. Stewart," Nolan said, and his expression grew serious. "I have to warn you. When I flagged the account, I triggered an audit. That is standard procedure. But in my experience, when external vendors are messing with accounts, it is rarely just one person. It is usually a systemic gap." He hesitated. "Watch your autopay," he said. "What?" "Sometimes, when these glitches happen, or when we lock down an account, the automated systems get confused. Retaliation does not always look like a person doing something bad. Sometimes it looks like a computer making a mistake, an administrative accident." He stood up. "I have to go. If anyone asks, we never met." He left me sitting there with my cold latte. Administrative accidents. I checked my bank app. Everything looked green. Tuesday morning. I woke up to an email notification. Transaction failed. Mortgage payment. I stared at the screen. It was the first of the month. My auto pay had been set up for 3 years. I had plenty of funds in the checking account. I logged in. A red banner stretched across the top of the Harbor Light portal. Action required. Insufficient funds/transfer rejected. I checked my checking account balance. $12,000. The mortgage payment was $3,200. There was no reason for it to fail. Then I saw the fine print on the rejection notice. Error code 404. Linking error. They had disconnected my checking account from the mortgage profile. Just unlinked it, as if it had never been there. If I had not checked my email, if I had been busy at work and missed the notification, the payment would have been late. Then 15 days later, a late fee, then 30 days later, a report to the credit bureaus, a paper trail of financial distress. See, she cannot afford the house. She is missing payments. My hands shook, but I forced them to type. I re-entered the routing number. I re-entered the account number. I made a manual one-time payment. I took a screenshot of the confirmation number. Then I called the bank. I spoke to a supervisor. She was apologetic but vague. It looks like a system update glitch. Ms. Stewart, we have been migrating servers. Sometimes links get dropped. I want a written confirmation that this was a bank error. I said firmly, I want a letter stating that I had funds available and the failure was on your end. I can send you an email confirmation of the payment. She offered, that is not what I asked for. I want a statement of error. We do not usually. I will wait. I said. I waited on hold for 45 minutes. Finally, she came back and agreed to send a secure message detailing the technical disruption. I printed it out. I added it to the file. Nolan was right. They were trying to trip me up. They were throwing rocks at my feet, hoping I would stumble. That night, the siege moved from the digital world back to the physical one. I was in the study, reviewing the footage from my new Northline camera system. It was 11 o'clock. The house was dark. I had one monitor dedicated to the side gate, the entrance to the backyard that led to the window well. I saw movement. I leaned closer to the screen. The night vision camera turned everything into ghostly shades of gray and white. A figure was standing at the gate. They were not trying to open it. They were just standing there. They wore a hooded sweatshirt, the hood pulled up. They were wearing a face mask, the kind we all got used to seeing during the pandemic. But black. They stood perfectly still, staring at the house, staring, specifically, at the kitchen window where the light was still on. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but then I stopped. What was the crime? Standing on the sidewalk? Looking at a house? The figure was technically on public property. They were not trespassing. They were not holding a weapon. If I called the police, by the time the cruiser arrived, they would be gone. And I would have another report on file. Resident reported suspicious person. No subject found. Another tick in the paranoid column. I watched the screen. My breath shallow. The figure raised a hand. They waved. It was a slow, mocking wave. They knew I had cameras. They knew I was watching. Then, a car rolled slowly down the street. It was the dark sedan again. No headlights. It stopped right next to the figure. The figure got in the passenger side. The car drove away, disappearing into the dark. I did not call the police. I saved the clip. Intimidation_sidegate_11 p.m. I realized then that this was not just about scaring me. It was about exhaustion. They wanted me to stay up all night watching the screens. They wanted me to be too tired to work, too tired to think, too tired to fight back. I turned off the monitor. I checked the locks. I went to bed with a chair wedged under my bedroom doorknob. I did not sleep. The next day, I took a personal day from work. I told my boss I had a migraine. It was not a lie. My head was pounding with a pressure that felt like a vice. I had an appointment with Elise Marr. Maya had recommended her. Elise was a private investigator who did not work out of a noir office with Venetian blinds. She worked out of a cluttered spare room in her ranch house in Medford, surrounded by 3 computer monitors and a half-eaten bag of pretzels. Elise was in her 50s, with dyed red hair and a smoker's rasp. Though she chewed nicotine gum incessantly, She was a former insurance fraud examiner. She knew how to spot a fake claim, and she knew how to spot a setup. She watched the video of the masked figure. She listened to the audio of the crying. She looked at my timeline. She sat back and popped a piece of gum into her mouth. "You are a line item," she said. "Excuse me? You think this is personal?" Elise said. "And it is, to you. But to the people running this, you are a distressed asset. You are a cell on a spreadsheet that is colored red, and they want to turn it green." She pulled up a database on her center screen. "Marrowgate Holdings," she said, typing furiously. "You said the lawn guy saw a magnet with that name?" "Yes." "Okay, Marrowgate is a bottom feeder. I have seen them before. They are a property consultancy firm. That is a polite way of saying they specialize in distressed acquisitions. What does that mean? It means they buy houses that are not for sale yet. They target people who are vulnerable, divorces, probate battles, elderly folks with tax liens. They swoop in, offer a quick cash buyout, usually 20% under market value, and then flip the property or rent it out. But my house is not distressed." I said, "I pay my mortgage." Elise pointed a finger at me. "Exactly. That is why they are manufacturing the distress. They cannot buy you out if you are stable, so they make you unstable. They create maintenance issues, like the crying sound, to make you doubt the structure. They mess with your bank to make you doubt your finances. They send people to stand outside to make you doubt your safety." She turned the screen toward me. "Look at this address for Marrowgate. It was a P.O. box in a strip mall in Saugus. Now look at who else uses that P.O. box." She pulled up a list. Apex Residential Solutions, Clearpath Property, Briar Glen Renewal Trust. They are all the same people, Elise said. "A network of LLCs designed to churn properties. And guess what?" "What?" "I traced the funding for Marrowgate. It comes from a private equity pool, and one of the major investors in that pool?" She clicked a final link. "Redwood Fidelity Emerging Markets Fund." The circle closed. Gordon Pell's company was funding the entity that was harassing me. "He is buying the neighborhood." Elise said, "Or at least, the prime lots. Your house is on a double lot, right? Corner of Elm and Maple?" "Yes." "That is a developer's dream. Honey, tear down your 1950s colonial. Put up 2 luxury condos. Profit margin is easily $500,000. I felt sick. It was not just about Lila. It was about greed. They were terrorizing a mother and child for a zoning play. But the crying. I said, "Why go to that length? Why the specific sound?" Elise picked up the Ziploc bag with the device. She took out the SD card and inserted it into a reader. "Let us listen to the raw file," she said. She opened an audio editing program. The waveform appeared on the screen, jagged spikes of sound. She put on headphones, then handed me a pair. "Listen closely," she said. "Not to the crying. Listen to the silence in between." I pressed the headphones to my ears. Sob, sob, gasp. Then, silence. But it was not true silence. "Turn it up," Elise said, adjusting a slider. I heard it, a low, dull hum, and then, very faintly, a metallic clank, like silverware hitting a plate, and a murmur of voices. "It is background noise," Elise said. "This wasn't recorded in a studio, and it wasn't recorded in a basement. What is it?" "It sounds like a cafeteria," she said, "or a public waiting room." She isolated a frequency. "Hear that ding? That 3-note chime?" I listened. Ding dong ding. "I know that sound." I whispered, "Where?" "That is the announcement chime for the Civic Center, the Briar Glen Community Center. Lila takes dance classes there. I have sat in that waiting room 100 times. Elise nodded. "Someone recorded this in a public place. Maybe a kid crying because they scraped their knee, or they didn't want to go to class. They captured it on a phone, cleaned it up, looped it, and put it in your ceiling. It is a template." Elise said, "They probably use this same file for other houses. It is generic enough to be scary, but real enough to trick the brain. It is lazy." "Ariana, they are reusing their assets. Lazy." I thought, but effective. We were interrupting the meeting when my phone rang. It was Lila. I held up a hand to Elise. I took a deep breath. I forced my face into a smile. Even though no one could see it, I changed my voice from the flat, hard tone of the investigator to the warm, bright tone of the mother. "Hi, sweetie," I said. "How is the hike?" "Mom, it is so cool." Lila's voice was tinny and breathless. "We climbed Mount Joe today. You can see the whole lake, and I saw a bald eagle." "That is amazing." "Honey, are you wearing your good boots? No blisters?" "No, I am fine. We are making s'mores tonight. I just wanted to say hi. I miss you," I said, and my voice cracked. "Just a little. I miss you too." "Mom, is the house okay? Is it weird being there alone?" I looked at the audio waveform on the screen. I looked at the map of shell companies. I looked at Elise, who was grimly chewing her gum. "The house is great." I lied. "It is very quiet. I'm just reading a lot of books." "Okay, good. Evan said you might be lonely." I froze. "When did you talk to your dad?" "He called me this morning. He said to tell you not to worry about the leaking noises." The leaking noises? Evan had planted a seed. He was gaslighting her too, preparing her for the narrative that the house was falling apart. "Dad is just being Dad," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The house is solid as a rock. Lee, do not worry about anything. Just have fun." "Okay, love you, Mom. Love you too. Baby." I hung up. The silence in Elise's office was heavy. "He is talking to her," I said. "He is priming her. We need to move fast." Elise said, "We have the connection to Redwood. We have the financial tampering. We have the intimidation. But we need a smoking gun. We need something that physically links them to your property." She picked up the photo I had taken of the window well, the one with the blue paint smear. "You said this paint did not match your tools?" "No." "And the car you saw?" "The sedan? Blue license plate frame?" Elise typed something into her search bar. Contractor Supply Industrial Blue. She scrolled through images of tools. DeWalt is yellow. Milwaukee is red. Makita is teal. Then she stopped. "Look at this," she said. She pulled up a local business page. Pell Property Renewal. It was a renovation company. The logo was a stylized house with a hammer. The hammer handle was painted a bright, electric blue. Their branding. Elise said, "They paint their tool handles blue so they do not get mixed up on job sites. It is a signature. Pell Property Renewal." I read, "Gordon Pell? I bet my license on it." Elise said, "It is his private contracting arm, the company he uses to fix up the houses Marrowgate buys." She turned to me. "Ariana, the person who pried open your window well used a pry bar belonging to Gordon Pell's construction company. They did not just hire a random thug. They used their own crew." My hands were fists in my lap. "They got sloppy," Elise said. "They thought you were just a scared mom. They did not think you would look at the screws. They did not think you would look for paint transfer." She printed the page. "We have them," she said. "We can place Pell Property Renewal at the scene of the break-in." I looked at the logo. The blue hammer. I felt a cold, dangerous calm settle over me. They wanted to buy my house? They wanted to take my daughter? They had just handed me the weapon I needed to burn their whole kingdom down. I stood up. "What is the next step?" I asked. Elise smiled. And this time, it was genuine. "Now? We set the trap. We make them think they have won. We invite them in. And then we close the door." The strategy meeting did not happen in a boardroom. It happened in my kitchen, with the blinds drawn and the new Northline camera monitor humming on the counter. Maya Rourke sat at the island, her posture rigid, her legal pad aligned perfectly with the edge of the granite. Elise Marr sat opposite her, chewing a piece of nicotine gum with a slow, rhythmic jaw movement that reminded me of a metronome counting down time. "We are not setting them up," Maya said, her voice sharp and precise. "Entrapment is a defense they could use if we induce them to commit a crime they otherwise would not have committed. We are not doing that. We are simply presenting a target. We are creating a vacuum, and we are going to let them rush in to fill it." I looked at the phone sitting in the center of the table. "You want me to lie to them?" I said, "I want you to act." Maya corrected. They are operating on the assumption that you are terrified, isolated, and financially unstable. They believe their campaign is working. We are going to confirm that belief. We need them to get confident. When they get confident, they get sloppy. They stop hiding behind shell companies and start putting things in writing. Elise leaned forward. They need to commit a clear offense. Ariana. Right now, we have circumstantial harassment. We have a noise. We have a lock. We have a bank glitch. It is all deniable. We need fraud. We need clear intent to deceive for financial gain. We need trespass with intent. I picked up the phone. I felt a cold sheen of sweat on my palms. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the performance I was about to give. I dialed the number for Caldwell and Reeve Conflict Solutions. It rang 3 times. A receptionist answered. Her voice was polished, professional, and utterly devoid of warmth. Caldwell and Reeve. How may I direct your call? I took a breath. I let my voice tremble. I pitched it up half an octave, injecting the specific, brittle strain of a woman who has not slept in 3 days. Hi, I said. My name is Ariana Stewart. I received a letter about relocation mediation. One moment. Ms. Stewart. The hold music was classical. Vivaldi. It was designed to soothe, to make you feel like you were in safe, capable hands. A man came on the line. Ms. Stewart? This is Simon Caldwell. I am one of the partners here. I am so glad you called. He sounded kind. He sounded like a favorite uncle. It made my stomach turn. Mr. Caldwell, I said, letting a jagged sigh escape. I do not know what to do. I got your letter, and, honestly, I am at the end of my rope. I paused, waiting for him to step in. I understand. He said softly. The letter mentioned some community safety concerns. Have you been experiencing issues at the property? I have, I whispered. Noises, people outside. Everything is a mess. I do not feel safe here alone. My daughter is away, and I'm terrified to bring her back to this house. That is a terrible feeling. Simon said, No one should feel unsafe in their own home. That is exactly why we reached out. We specialize in helping people transition out of difficult housing situations quickly and with dignity. I just want out, I said. I cannot handle the repairs. I cannot handle the mortgage if the bank is freezing my accounts. Can you really help me move? Absolutely. We work with a network of buyers who specialize in as-is acquisitions. No inspections, no open houses, just a clean cash offer and a timeline that works for you. We can even advance you a relocation stipend to get you into a hotel or a rental immediately. How? How fast? We can have paperwork to you by end of day. Simon said, If you sign, we can close in 7 days. 7 days. I repeated, I can have our partner broker send over the option agreement right now. He said, just to look at, no pressure. But Ms. Stewart? Yes? For your safety and your peace of mind. Sooner is usually better. Send it. I said, please. I hung up. I looked at Maya. He was practically salivating. I said, Maya checked her watch. 7 days. They are in a rush. That is good. It means they are on a schedule we do not know about. 2 hours later, an email arrived. It was not from Caldwell and Reeve. It was from a brokerage called Severn Gate Realty. The subject line was Purchase Option Agreement, 44 Elm Street. Urgent. I opened the attachment. It was a standard purchase and sale agreement, but heavily modified. The purchase price was $650,000. My house was appraised at $820,000 last year. They were lowballing me by nearly $200,000. But the kicker was in the addendum. Seller agrees to vacate premises within 48 hours of closing. Buyer agrees to provide a relocation assistance stipend of $10,000, contingent upon immediate vacancy and confidentiality regarding the terms of the sale. Confidentiality. They wanted to buy my silence. I printed it out. Maya circled the confidentiality clause with a red pen. There it is, she said. That is the hush money, if this was a normal sale. Nobody cares if you talk about it. They want you gone, and they want you quiet. Elise was typing on her laptop. She had pulled up the corporate filings for Severn Gate Realty. "Here we go," she mumbled around her gum. Severn Gate. The broker of record is a guy named Miles Dorgan. She turned the screen to us. It was a LinkedIn profile picture of a man with 2 white teeth and a suit that looked expensive but ill-fitting. "I know this guy," Elise said. "I worked a case involving him 3 years ago in Revere. He is the go-to guy for quick flips. He does not list houses on the MLS. He facilitates private transfers between distressed sellers and holding companies." She tapped a key. "And look at this. I am cross-referencing his recent sales with police blotter reports for the same addresses." A list populated on the screen. 12 Oak Lane. Sold January 2024. Police report. Suspicious activity. Noise complaints filed 1 week prior. 88 Highland Avenue. Sold March 2024. Police report. Vandalism. Window tampering filed 2 weeks prior. "It is a pattern," Elise said grimly. "They target a house. They unleash the harassment campaign. The noises, the vandalism, the creepy visitors. Then Miles Dorgan swoops in with the lowball offer to save the terrified owner." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. I was just the latest project on their assembly line. I texted Marco. "Me. Do you know a realtor named Miles Dorgan? Or Severn Gate Realty?" He replied 3 minutes later. Marco. "Yeah, he is the guy who sold Mrs. Gable's house on the other side of town last fall." "Why?" Me. "Just curious. Did Mrs. Gable have issues before she moved?" Marco. "Funny you ask. She told me she thought her house was haunted. Said she heard voices in the walls. Moved out in a week. Dorgan handled the sale." I showed the text to Maya. "Witnesses," Maya said. "We have prior bad acts. This moves it from a dispute to a conspiracy." The next blow landed at 4 o'clock. I received an email notification from my personal Gmail account. It was a forwarded thread. From Support Harborlight, com, to Ariana, Stewart Gmail, com, subject, RE, Hardship Assistance Application, confirmation. "Dear Ms. Stewart, thank you for speaking with our loss mitigation team this morning. As discussed, we have received your request for hardship assistance due to unforeseen mental health challenges. Please sign the attached affidavit to freeze your mortgage payments for 90 days while we review your solvency." I stared at the screen. I had not spoken to the loss mitigation team. I had not requested hardship assistance, and I certainly had not claimed mental health challenges. I scrolled down. Below the bank's email was a reply that appeared to come from me. From Ariana, Stewart Gmail, com. Sent. Today, 1:15 p.m. to Support Harborlight. Com. Subject, hardship application. Please accept this request. I am unable to maintain my employment due to severe anxiety and paranoia. I need to freeze my payments immediately. I felt the blood drain from my face. They had spoofed my email address. Or worse, they had gained access to it. I grabbed my phone and called Nolan Park. I did not care if he was at work. "Nolan," I said, "check my logs. Right now." "Ms. Stewart? Check the communication logs. Did I send an email at 1:15 today?" I heard him typing. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. "No," Nolan said. "No email came from your external address. But what? There is an entry in the CRM system, a note logged by a user ID. It says, 'Customer emailed request for hardship,' and the text of the email is pasted into the notes. They faked the record." I said, "They did not actually hack my email. They just entered a data point into the bank's system saying I sent it." "It looks that way," Nolan said quietly. "And Ms. Stewart? The user ID that entered the note? It is the same vendor credential from before, the one tied to the IT contractor. They are building a file on me." I said, "They are creating a document trail that says I am mentally unstable and broke." "Why?" Nolan asked. "Because if I fight them for custody, or if I try to sue them, they will pull these records. They will say, 'Look, she admitted she was paranoid. She admitted she could not pay.'" I hung up. I looked at Maya. They faked a confession. I said, they put words in my mouth in a bank record. That is fraud, Maya said. Her eyes were cold and hard. That is wire fraud and bank fraud. And because they entered it into a federally insured institution's records, it is a federal crime. She picked up her phone. Do not delete that email. Do not reply to it. We let it sit. It is the bait in the trap. That night, the house felt like a cage. Elise had left at 6. Maya had gone back to her office to draft the trap documents, a counteroffer that would force them to reveal their hand. I was alone. I sat in the study, the lights off, the glow of the monitors painting my face in blue and gray. At 11:45, the motion sensor on the side gate triggered. I leaned forward. The figure was back. Same hoodie, same mask, same stillness. But this time, they did not stop at the gate. They opened it. I watched as the figure walked into my backyard. They moved with a casual arrogance, stepping over the garden hose, walking right up to the window well, the one where I had found the paint. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I grabbed my cell phone. I dialed 911. Briar Glen Police, what is your emergency? There is an intruder in my backyard. I whispered, 44 Elm Street. He is by the basement window. Officers are dispatched. The dispatcher said, Are you in a safe room? I am locked in the study. I watched the screen. The figure knelt by the window well. They had a flashlight. They shone it down into the well, inspecting the grate. They were checking their work. They were making sure the device was still hidden, or maybe they were checking if I had found it. Then, the figure stood up. They looked directly at the camera I had installed under the eaves. They raised a hand and gave a thumbs up. It was chilling. It was a message. I see you seeing me. Then they turned and jogged back to the gate. I watched the street view camera. The dark sedan was waiting. The figure jumped in. But as the car pulled away, the headlights of a passing vehicle, a delivery truck, swept across the street. The light hit the side of the sedan. It hit the side mirror, and for a split second, it hit the window of the Miller's car parked in their driveway across the street. The reflection flared white, then vanished. The police arrived 5 minutes later. They were professional, but slow. They walked the yard. They found boot prints in the mulch. We will file a report, the officer said. But he is gone. Ma'am, I know. I said, I showed them the footage. They nodded, took a copy, and left. They treated it as a prowler, a nuisance. I sent the footage to Elise. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Ariana, Elise said. Her voice was tight with excitement. Go to the Street View clip. Timestamp 11:47 and 12 seconds. I scrubbed the video bar. Look at the neighbor's car window, she said. The rear passenger window of the Honda across the street. I zoomed in. The reflection of the sedan was distorted, curved by the glass, but the delivery truck's headlights had illuminated the rear of the sedan as it pulled away. In the reflection, reversed and grainy, was a license plate. I cannot read it. I said, it is too blurry. Elise made a sound of triumph. You cannot read it, but I have enhancement software. I inverted the image, corrected the curve, and sharpened the contrast. She sent me a picture. 442-TBX. It is a partial, she said. The first 3 are clear. The last 3 are a guess. But it is a Massachusetts commercial plate. I ran a search for vehicles registered to commercial entities with that sequence in Briar Glen and the surrounding towns. She continued, and there is a match. A Ford Fusion, black, registered to a fleet management company. Who leases the fleet? I asked. Pell Property Renewal. Elise said, the air left my lungs. Gordon Pell's construction company, the company that renovates the houses Marrowgate steals. We have a vehicle registered to your ex-husband's stepfather's company, driven by a man trespassing on your property, checking a window well where we found their paint. It is done. I said, we have them. We have the chain. Elise corrected. Now we need the lock. We need to tie this to the buyout offer. I hung up. I felt a strange sensation. The fear was evaporating. It was being replaced by a cold, crystalline readiness, I was no longer the prey. I was the hunter waiting in the blind. The next morning, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Evan. He was holding 2 grocery bags. He looked tired. He looked like the man I had married 10 years ago. The man who used to make me pancakes on Sundays and rub my feet when I was pregnant with Lila. I unlocked the door. Evan, I said, "Hey, Ari." He offered a tentative smile. "I was just at the store and I do not know. I thought maybe you were running low on stuff. I know you hate shopping when you are stressed." He held up the bags. "I got the rotisserie chicken and those sparkling waters you like." He stepped inside. I did not stop him. He walked to the kitchen, setting the bags on the counter. He started unpacking them. It was domestic. It was familiar. It was a performance. "So, how are things?" he asked, not looking at me. He was putting the waters in the fridge. "Quiet," I said. "Yeah? No more noises?" I watched him. He did not look at me. He looked over my shoulder. His eyes darted to the hallway, to the basement door. It was a quick glance, a micro-movement, but I saw it. He was checking. He wanted to know if the chair was under the knob. He wanted to know if I had gone down there. No noises. I lied. I think it was just the pipes. Evan let out a breath. He relaxed visibly. "See? I told you. Old houses. They settle. You get worked up, and your brain fills in the gaps." He turned to me, closing the fridge. "Ari, about the offer." I stiffened. I had not mentioned the offer to him since the text. "I know it is hard," he said. "I know you love this place, but maybe it is a sign. If you sell, you get a fresh start. We can find you a condo near Lila's school. Less maintenance, less stress." He reached out and touched my arm. His hand was warm. "I just want you to be happy. Ari, I worry about you." I looked at his face. His eyes were blue, like Lila's. He looked sincere, and that was the moment my heart finally broke. Because he meant it. In his twisted, justified way, he believed he was helping. He had convinced himself that terrorizing me, gaslighting me, and forcing me out of my home was an act of mercy. He was doing the dirty work for Gordon Pell, but he was telling himself he was the savior. He was not a mastermind. He was a weak man who had sold his conscience for a seat at the table. He knew. He knew about the crying. He knew about the man in the mask. He knew about the fake bank records. And he was standing in my kitchen, offering me a rotisserie chicken as a consolation prize for my sanity. "Thank you for the groceries." "Evan," I said. My voice was hollow. He smiled, relieved. "Anytime. We are a team, right? For Lila." "Right," I said. "For Lila." He left 10 minutes later. I locked the door behind him. I slid the deadbolt home. I leaned against the wood and let one single tear slide down my cheek. I grieved the man I thought he was. I grieved the co-parenting relationship I thought we had. Then I wiped the tear away. He was not my husband. He was an opposing party. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Marco. "Marco, can I come by? I need to tell you something. Face to face." He arrived 20 minutes later. He did not come to the door. He stood by his truck at the end of the driveway. I walked out to meet him. Marco looked sick. His tanned skin was sallow. He refused to meet my eyes. "Ms. Stewart," he said, "I have to tell you the truth. I cannot sleep." "What is it?" "Marco?" "The crying," he said. "The first day. When I called you." "Yes? I did not just hear it," he said. I did hear it, but..." He took a deep breath. "I got a text." He said, about 10 minutes before I started trimming the bushes. From a blocked number. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. Unknown. "Hey Marco. Homeowner at 44 Elm is worried about an animal trapped in the window well on the east side. Can you listen close when you are over there? Check for crying sounds. She is inside and can't hear it." I stared at the text. "I thought it was from you," Marco said miserably. "Or maybe a neighbor." It seemed helpful. So I went over there, and I listened really hard, and when I heard the crying, I thought, oh God, they were right. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I did not know. Ms. Stewart. But after you told me about the lock and the weird car, I realized they told me to go listen. They wanted me to find it. They used you. I said, yeah. Marco said, they used me to make sure you believed it, because if the lawn guy hears it, it must be real. He kicked the tire of his truck. I am willing to talk, he said. To the police, to your lawyer, whoever. I am not going to be a pawn for these creeps. Thank you. Marco, I said, you have no idea how much that helps. I watched him drive away. I looked back at my house. They had weaponized everyone. My bank, my neighbors, my lawn guy, my ex-husband. They had turned my entire world into a mechanism designed to crush me. But mechanisms have gears, and if you jam a crowbar into the right gear, the whole machine strips. I walked back inside. I called Maya. Send the counteroffer. I said, tell Severn Gate we are interested. Tell them I am ready to sign. I paused. And tell Elise to get the camera ready. We are going to have a closing ceremony they will never forget. We did not sleep. The energy in the house was not the frantic, buzzing anxiety of the previous nights. It was the cold, efficient hum of a machine finally running at full capacity. My dining room table had ceased to be a place for meals and had become a command center. Maya Rourke stood at the head of the table, organizing stacks of paper into 3 identical piles. She moved with the precision of a surgeon. The packet. It was 2 inches thick. It contained the photographs of the scuffed floor and the hidden panel. It contained the Ziploc bag with the audio device and the analysis of the sound file. It contained the sworn affidavit from Marco Daines regarding the anonymous text. It contained the bank records showing the manipulated hardship request and the failed autopay. It contained the purchase option from Severn Gate Realty, highlighting the confidentiality clause. And finally, it contained the photograph of the rental car license plate, traced directly to the fleet managed by Pell Property Renewal. We are not asking for permission, Maya said, snapping a binder clip onto the first stack. We are not filing a complaint. We are dropping a bomb. We sent the packets by courier at 9 o'clock in the morning. One went to the Briar Glen Chief of Police, bypassing the patrol desk entirely. One went to the Internal Compliance Officer at Harbor Light Community Credit, copied to the Regional Regulatory Board. One went to the Massachusetts Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, flagged for predatory housing practices. While the couriers were en route, Elise was closing the final loop. She had met Marco at a coffee shop at 7 in the morning. He was shaking, but he signed the statement. He gave her his phone to extract the metadata from the anonymous text. Ariana, Elise said. Calling me from her car, I ran the number that texted Marco. It is a burner, obviously, a prepaid smartphone activated 3 days ago. Dead end? I asked. No, she said. I traced the activation point. The SIM card was purchased at a digital kiosk inside the Briar Glen Commons shopping plaza. So anyone could have bought it. Anyone. Elise agreed. But here is the kicker. That kiosk is right outside the entrance to the Pell Property Renewal Office Suite. And looking at the transaction logs, the burner was bought with cash. 2 minutes after a Pell Company credit card was used at the same kiosk to renew the data plans for their fleet iPads. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. They thought no one would ever look that closely at a $20 transaction. They were right there. I said, they were right there. Elise confirmed. It places a member of their team at the point of purchase for the tool used to manipulate your witness. It is circumstantial, but combined with the car and the paint, it is devastating. I hung up. I looked at the clock. It was 11 o'clock. I had one more meeting. This one was not about evidence. It was about truth. I drove to the Lake Haven Diner. It was a neutral ground, a place of chrome and vinyl and the smell of bacon grease. It was public. It was safe. Evan was waiting in a booth near the window. He looked terrible. His eyes were rimmed with red, and he was shredding a paper napkin into tiny snowy piles on the Formica table. Maya was there too, but she was not sitting with us. She was 3 booths away, facing the door, drinking coffee and reading a newspaper. She was my safety net. I slid into the booth opposite Evan. I did not bring a notebook. I did not bring a recorder that he could see. I brought only myself. Evan, I said softly. He looked up. He tried to smile, but it was a grimace. Hey, Ari. Thanks for meeting me. I thought maybe you were ready to talk about the offer. I did not answer. I signaled the waitress and ordered a coffee. I waited until she left. I am not here to talk about the offer. Evan, I am here to give you a chance. A chance for what? He asked, shifting in his seat. A chance to get off the train before it crashes. He laughed, a nervous, jerky sound. What are you talking about? Ari, you are being dramatic. I leaned forward. I kept my voice low, gentle. I did not want to corner him. I wanted to unlock him. I know about the device in the ceiling. Evan, I know about the text to Marco. I know about the man in the mask who drives a car registered to your stepfather's company. And I know about the fake bank records. Evan's face went white. He opened his mouth to deny it, to give me the standard line about old houses and paranoia. Stop, I said. Please, do not lie to me. Not anymore. We have the proof. The police have the proof. It is already gone. Evan, the packets were delivered this morning. He froze. The shredding of the napkins stopped. You went to the police? And the Attorney General? I added. He stared at me. The reality of it washed over him. He slumped against the red vinyl seat, looking suddenly very young and very lost. Why? I asked. That is the only thing I do not understand. Why did you do it? Was it just the money? Did Gordon promise you a cut of the condo development? Evan looked down at his hands. He shook his head slowly. It wasn't the money, he whispered. I mean, the money was part of it for him, but that is not how he sold it to me. How did he sell it to you? He told me you were going to leave, Evan said. His voice was thick. He said that once Lila got older, you were going to sell the house and move back to the city, or maybe out of state. He said you were unstable, that you were lonely, and that you would take her away from me. I stared at him. I have never said I would move. I know, Evan said. But Gordon, he gets in your head. He said we needed leverage. He said if we could create a situation where you were overwhelmed, where you needed help, we could step in. We could force a move to a local condo. Something controlled. Something where he held the deed. He looked up, his eyes wet. He called it protecting the family. Ari, he said we were keeping Lila close. He said we were saving you from yourself. I felt a wave of nausea. It was not just greed. It was control. Gordon Pell had weaponized my ex-husband's fear of losing his daughter to orchestrate a campaign of terror, and you went along with it. I said, you let them gaslight me. You let them make me feel like I was losing my mind. I didn't think it would go this far. Evan pleaded. I thought it would just be some noises, some letters, just enough to make you want to sell. I didn't know about the bank fraud. I didn't know about the guy in the mask. You knew enough. I said. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone. There is one more thing. Evan, one thing that proves you were more involved than you think. I opened the audio file, the one Elise had cleaned up. Listen to the background. I said. I hit play. Sob, gasp, and then the silence, and then the faint, tinny sound in the distance. Ding dong ding. Evan frowned. What is that? I watched his face. That is the lobby chime for the Briar Glen Community Center. I said, Lila's dance recital venue. Evan went still. And the crying? I continued. It is not a stock sound effect. It is a recording of a child. I watched the realization dawn on him. The horror. Where do you keep the old home videos? Evan? The ones from when Lila was 5? The ones on the cloud drive you share with your mother? Evan's mouth opened. He looked like he was going to be sick. That is Lila, he whispered. That is Lila crying. Yes, I said. It was the day she scraped her knee in the lobby before the tap recital. You recorded it because you were trying to distract her. You have that video. Gordon had someone pull the audio from your personal family archives. Evan, He didn't just terrorize me. He used our daughter's voice to do it. He violated your privacy to hurt me." Evan put his head in his hands. He made a sound that was half sob, half groan. "He mined us," Evan said into his palms. "He mined us for data." My phone buzzed on the table. It was Nolan Park from the bank. "I have to take this," I said. I answered. "Ms. Stewart?" Nolan's voice was breathless. "The compliance audit is finished. We found the link. Tell me, the vendor credential that accessed your account? The one that spoofed the hardship email? It was authenticated through a VPN tunnel. We traced the tunnel's origin IP, and it resolves to the guest network at the offices of Caldwell and Reeve," Nolan said. "But here's the smoking gun. The MAC address of the device that logged in? It matches a laptop that was previously registered to the bank's own external contractor list. A laptop assigned to a project manager from Redwood Fidelity. They used a company machine." I said. "They used a machine that had legacy access rights to our system." Nolan said. "It is permission abuse. It is not a hack. It is corporate espionage. We are freezing the vendor's contract and notifying federal regulators. Ms. Stewart, your account is locked down. You are safe. Thank you." "Nolan?" I hung up. I looked at Evan. He was still staring at the table, the shredded napkin like confetti around his fingers. "It is over." "Evan," I said, "the bank knows. The police know." He looked up. He looked terrified. "What is going to happen to him? To Gordon?" I stood up. "I do not know. But I know what is going to happen to me. I am going home. I left him there. He did not follow me. He looked like a man who had woken up to find his house had burned down while he was sleeping." I drove home. The final act was set for 4 o'clock. I had invited the audience. Officer Monroe was there, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. She had seen the packet. Her demeanor had shifted from condescending pity to sharp, angry professionalism. Elise was there, sitting at the island with her laptop open. Daphne Klein and Tim Miller were there. My neighbors. They looked uncomfortable, but they had agreed to come when I told them I needed witnesses to a safety inspection. At 4:15, a silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway. A man got out. He was not the lawn guy. He was not the assessor. He was a man in a charcoal suit, with silver hair and a smile that cost money. He rang the doorbell. I opened it. Maya stood right behind me. "Ms. Stewart?" the man said. His voice was smooth. "My name is Arthur Vance. I represent the investment trust that has been in communication with you regarding the property." He did not say Marrowgate. He did not say Caldwell and Reeve. He kept it vague. "Come in," I said. He stepped into the foyer. He stopped when he saw the crowd in the kitchen. He saw the police uniform. He saw the neighbors. He did not flinch. He adjusted his cufflinks. "I see you have company," he said pleasantly. "Perhaps we should speak privately?" "No," I said. "We will speak here." Arthur Vance smiled. "Very well. Ms. Stewart, my clients are aware that there has been some friction regarding the acquisition offer. They are prepared to increase the relocation stipend to $50,000 and to offer an immediate closing bonus." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a check. "We just want to resolve this," he said, "for the good of the neighborhood, to stop the unpleasantness." Maya stepped forward. "There will be no settlement, Mr. Vance, and there will be no sale." Vance turned to her. "You are her counsel?" "I am," Maya said. "And you should know that a preservation order has been filed. Any attempt to contact my client, or to access her property, will be viewed as witness tampering in an ongoing criminal investigation." Vance raised an eyebrow. "Criminal investigation? I think you are overreacting. This is a simple real estate negotiation." "Is it?" I asked. I walked to the kitchen counter. I picked up the Ziploc bag containing the black box and the speaker. I held it up. "Is this real estate negotiation?" I asked. "A device planted in my ceiling?" Vance looked at it. He shrugged. "I have no idea what that is." I picked up the photo of the blue paint smear. "What about this?" I asked. "Paint from a pry bar used by Pell Property Renewal to break into my window well?" Vance's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat. Ms. Stewart, you are making accusations that are frankly slanderous. My client has no knowledge of any. I cut him off. I looked him dead in the eye. I asked the question that I had been saving, the question that cut through the layers of LLCs and trusts and corporate veils. Who told Marco to listen? Vance paused. What? Marco Daines. I said, the lawn guy. Who told him to listen at the window well? Who sent the text telling him specifically where the sound would be? Vance opened his mouth, then closed it. Because, I continued, my voice rising just enough to fill the room, only the person who planted the device would know exactly where to tell a witness to stand. Only the person who installed it would know it was in the north window well. I pointed at him. You needed a witness. You used Marco to validate the lie. And by doing that, you admitted that you knew the device was there before anyone else did. The room was silent. Officer Monroe was staring at Vance. The neighbors were staring at Vance. Vance looked around the room. He saw the trap. He saw that this was not a negotiation. It was an exposure. He put the check back in his pocket. I think we are done here, he said. He turned to leave. One moment. Officer Monroe said. She stepped forward, her hand resting near her belt. Mr. Vance, I need to get your information, and I need you to wait here while I contact the detective division. We have a trespassing complaint that names your firm. Vance stiffened. Am I being detained? You are being identified as a person of interest in a harassment investigation. Monroe said, Do not leave the driveway. Vance looked at me. The smooth veneer cracked. Just for a second, I saw the anger underneath. You are making a mistake, he said. You are a single woman in a big house. You cannot fight this. I smiled. It was the first real smile I had felt in a week. I am not alone, I said. I have witnesses. I have a lawyer. I have the police. And I have the truth. Get out of my house. He walked out. Officer Monroe followed him to his car. I turned to the room. Daphne looked shocked. Tim Miller gave me a slow nod of respect. Elise popped a piece of gum and winked. It was over. The next few hours were a blur of statements and paperwork. The police formally opened the case. Nolan called back to say that the state banking regulators had issued an immediate suspension of the vendor credentials associated with the fraud. By 8 o'clock, the house was empty again, but it was not silent. I turned on the radio in the kitchen. I turned on the TV in the living room. I filled the space with my own noise. I called Lila. Hi, Mom, she answered. We are on the bus coming home tomorrow. I know, baby, I said. I cannot wait to see you. Is the house okay? She asked. I looked around. I looked at the spot on the ceiling where the vent cover was now screwed back in place, with mismatched screws. Because I didn't have the shiny ones anymore. I looked at the sturdy new locks on the door. The house is perfect, I said. It is safe. I hung up. My phone buzzed one last time. It was Evan. Evan. I left the diner. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a while. I cannot go to my mom's. Not after what I know. I waited. Evan. He called me. Gordon. He knows you blew it up. He is furious. Ari. I told him I didn't know anything. I'm sorry. I can't testify. He will destroy me. I read the text. He was still afraid. He was still weak. I replied. Me. You do not have to testify yet, but you have to choose. Evan. You are either Lila's father, or you are Gordon's stepson. You cannot be both anymore. I put the phone down. I walked to the basement door. I opened it. I walked down the stairs. I stood in the center of the room. It was just a basement. It smelled like concrete and old dust. There were no ghosts. There were no monsters. There were only shadows. And I had turned on the lights. I was Ariana Stewart. I was a mother. I was a project manager. And I was the owner of 44 Elm Street, and I wasn't going anywhere. Thank you so much for listening to I Hear Crying. From your basement. Writing this story has been an intense journey into the psychology of gaslighting and the lengths a mother will go to protect her home. I hope Ariana's fight resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from. Are you tuning in from a quiet suburb like Briar Glen, or somewhere in the bustling city? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, betrayal, and revenge, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep writing. Please share your thoughts on the ending. Do you think Evan will ever truly stand up to his stepfather? Let's discuss it in the comments. Until next time.